Hey, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to be talking to John DeMena and talking about how he got started playing guitar, becoming a songwriter, a musician, his last record, which was released in 2023, and he's in the process of recording and tracking this new album, hopefully to come out later this year. And we're going to talk about gear he used on both of those records and kind of growing up and becoming just a guitar nerd and a guitarist for a living. If you're watching this video and you're new to this channel, I ask that you please subscribe and like this video. Let me know if there are artists and musicians that you would love to see interviewed on this channel. Really, my whole goal with doing these interviews is just to be able to get to talk to really cool people who are doing really cool things with their instruments. Without further ado, let's talk to John DeMena for sure, because I want to hear about this new record and the kind of direction and stuff you're going. But I would love to hear how did you get started as a guitar player, and at what point did music become something so important to your life that you wanted to pursue that for your career?
Yeah, like for me, it was kind of like necessity was the mother of invention. Like I grew up in Spain in a rural, like mainly agricultural, like 90% agricultural, economy, little town, like 15,000 people. So
Wow.
no music stores, no, record stores or anything like that. Not even bands. I mean, I think there was a band or something that at the time. So, the story that everybody, like 90s, you go, high school trading albums with people. Like it was like a great generation, like all the 90s rock like was really hitting at that time, so we were getting that. It was also a little slower over there at the time, so records will take a while and you really digest it. Like you spend some months like with friends or listening to something, and then you kind of liked it, and then you're like you get attracted to the whole idea of like the whole thing, like the rock music, or like the stories that and then you just somebody has a guitar, you go to a few parties, you learn a few songs, you learn a few chords, you want to get into that, and you put together a band. But we didn't have a scene in the area. We were the only band at the time.
Wow.
We didn't have anyone over there, so we were like just working with like producers that a funky band would recommend because it was the only studio in town. They were like, well, I know somebody who has a studio. And then, so your scene was anybody who was making music at the time. It doesn't matter if it was blues or flamenco or jazz. It's like, hey, do you know who has a mic? Oh, this guy has a microphone. Or, like it was very limited. And then we started playing shows, and, we recorded a few albums, and then we started doing like mini tours in the city, in the country, and then touring a little bit more. And I was always very, like, determined and like into like doing other things. And then I was really bohemian at the time, because I was like like buying all the guitar magazines and reading for hours into those, and everything kind of came from the US or California. So it was always like oh, that's where everything is, like that's where like you read about NAMM, like at the time when you were a kid, it was, oh my God, like if I can just go to there once, like once in my life, that would be, because if it felt so remote, it felt like, it's nothing like that over here. And then, you start playing, all the things, and then kind of like I always say, like, 20-year-old kamikaze lifestyle, just threw myself out here, you just roll the dice and you come over here and then see what happens. And then I survived, but then it was kind of like that. It was more like curiosity. Not too many things were available. There was no internet. There was, like baby internet. Right. So it was more like, with playing with bands or playing with, with guys, and always more from a songwriter point of view than thinking to be a session player or something like that. Because the concept of being a session player over there, it didn't even exist, to us. Right. I mean, we didn't know any guy who was like a drummer for, like a successful artist or something like that. So kind of like long story short, kind of like that's how it came to be. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you was like, and I feel like everybody, when they start playing music, especially playing music with friends, like you learn other people's songs. You play your favorite songs, you attempt some songs. At what point did you start writing your own music? Like with that original band, did y'all have like original songs that y'all were playing along with covers? Or at what point did songwriting kind of start to take over?
He was always like kind of like from the onset. Like
Yeah.
it was kind of like one of those things. I mean, we were horrible at the beginning. I mean,
Well,
which is like the songwriting is like, it is what it is. But always like curiosity. I've been like a very curious person, and I think that sometimes that's where things that made me create things that I thought that were I was never going to be able to do. They would just by being creative, and then just be like very curious about things, or we'll put together those things. At first, when you start writing those things, like the transitions are pretty obvious at the time, like the tempo and all that. So like young guys doing those things, it's obvious that like the first half of the song is awesome, man, but it's really obvious that this is like glued, and it's very forced. But that's kind of, you learn about like tempos and a lot about doing those things. So it's almost like a more naive type of approach, but it's kind of like teaches you like to think like a song. It's like act as a song. Like what would a song itself require? What it's asking? And then you learn to start serving the song more and not focus so much on the technique or something. Even though there was times that I have my good chunk of years, like my 20s, that I would just practicing and just focused on technique all the time. But at first you're not that good, so you kind of have to be curious, and you have to just be different, or try to or make whatever you have available possible. Because at the time for me it was like a few pedals and like a guitar, and that's all I had.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with curiosity is kind of the thing. I think, all of us who are full-time musicians, whether you're a songwriter, session musician, or you're gigging every weekend, like it all started by like, well, what if I picked up a guitar? And then, well, what if I tried to put a band together? Well, what if I tried to write my own stuff? And it's that curiosity to dare to do something crazy like play guitar for a living. I mean, it's it's a wild thing, but it takes a really curious person for sure. Okay, so you're writing in those early days, and when you came, how old were you when you moved?
20. I mean, I came the first time I was 21, but I was going back and forth for 3 years, and then 24 when I finally moved out here, like relocated myself.
Man, that's exciting. I mean, that's crazy. So what was that first kind of when you first started working here in LA? You said you were playing in bands, kind of gigging with people.
Playing with people, doing a few sessions, playing gigs for like singer-songwriters, or that need a guitar player for a gig or something like that. And then always trying to, be in a band, because that's where like my DNA, when I grew up, I was always in a band,
Yeah.
The thing here is like everybody moved out here to be busy, or to especially with today's, how things are. And it was very difficult to get that communion, or get, like that band, unity for a while, because people are doing 3 or 4 things, and it's completely understandable. Like people are doing a tour here, or they're doing this, or it was very hard to even just keep the same guys for like 6 months, and I was always writing, and that was my thing. It was like I kept writing, and I had more ideas and more ideas. And then there was one year that I went through 3 drummers in the same year. And then I was like, I think this has no future. I mean, like with this, it's going to be impossible to keep it together.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, if I can write everything, and then, it's a longer road, but if I can do everything myself, I will control this, because I'm not going to break up with myself. I can just hire other guys to do things on the record, and then take it as a solo artist, which is it was not my first idea, but now is the one that worked out. So it's kind of like it was the only step forward possible. Otherwise, I would be just auditioning guys, or doing more things here and there. Or
it's easy to get bogged down in all the stuff that's not making music. in working with other people. So that's interesting. So that, just like necessity, you looked at that and took advantage of that and started kind of doing everything on your own. So what you're writing all the time, what kind of routine, how do you stay diligent on writing frequently so that you're, constantly working that muscle out?
One of the things that I'm doing a lot now is taking spaces too, and letting songs or ideas or lyrics now, for example, rest and revisit after a while, and then maybe work on a couple of different things. I try to don't feel like I'm practicing, when I'm writing something. I try to feel more like I'm in the moment. Believe it or not, it's something weird that this may be like hippie type of thing, but a lot of the coolest things that I wrote were the first thing that I did as soon as I grabbed the guitar that day.
Yeah,
there is something to that you're not thinking. Is like you're in the moment, you're like blah, blah, and you just grab it, and it's like, I was like, man, that was super cool. Yeah. And then you follow it, and then you start developing it. After an hour, if I try to, it doesn't come out the same way. It's just, I don't know if it's like that, or sometimes I'm driving or something and I have an idea because I'm writing lyrics to the next song, and then the idea comes and I'm like, bah, 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 bah. Oh, I was like, oh, and then it goes and it's like, that's it. Yeah. And then there are hours that I'm here trying to think, okay, what's the song really asking here melodically for the, for the lyrics, or what's the melody asking for? And then I'm like, just take a break, and then you come back later. So, I mean, especially like if you're a solo artist, half of the time now is marketing, emails, this and that. Like I wish that I had the luxury of the time that I had in my 20s to be playing all day. And then just play and play and play. We're in the studio the other day, and I was saying, man, like I have to, like force myself to have a very, very steady routine a month before recording to really be up to speed. Because I was better 10 years ago, because that's all I did.
Right.
I was just 8 hours, like boom, 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 boom. Like now I have to, gigs or tours or interviews or marketing or this or the next album, the artwork is coming up, like who's gonna mix it, collaborations here and there. So taking space sometimes is great, but that also being curious. And I'm always like, we're walking somewhere and I hear a conversation somewhere, and I was like, that could be a cool line for for a song, and I grab it, like conversational, like people on the street, and then they say something. Or so I'm always in writer's mode, which I think it's a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. I was talking with my buddy just the other day, who's also a full-time songwriter, and you can't turn it off. It's one of those things that just throughout the day, there's all these things that inspire. And I think that there's a through line between that and like what you said earlier. I often find when I pick up my guitar, the first thing I play is the best because it's the most honest. It's coming, if I'm sitting there trying to tweak some, riff or hook for too long, it loses all the emotion. Yeah, because I'm fine tuning it. And so I feel like, and in this day and age, as we get, with AI and whatever else, more and more ability to kind of do things that are more perfect off the bat, which I don't think is a bad thing, but I think that there's something there to latch onto with that emotional, like what is the most honest. Maybe for me with singing is like very secondary to guitar. Guitar is what I went to college for, and that's what I've made my living. I never did the band thing. I've never actually been in a band. I've been a hired gun and a sideman, but I missed that train, and I just kind of started doing session work and just trying to keep it different all the time. And I felt like I was a lot better back in the day because it was, like you said, now to be sustainable. And I think to be a sustainable musician is to be successful. But that means, doing taxes and making sure, that there is consistent marketing and all these other things that fill my time, that when I sit down to play guitar, if the first thing that comes out, it's like, maybe that's the first time I picked up the guitar in a day or two, that's usually the most honest and
That's the
emotional thing. And for me, the same thing with vocals. If I can get the most honest take, it might not be the most perfect vocally, but I'll try, because vocals is so secondary for me. It's like I will try to, do too many takes to try to hit, the most perfect runs and notes, but it loses all of its, human nature to it.
Dude, like, here's the story. I mean, true story. You can test it after the interview, whatever you want. My song "Eternalize," which is kind of like the song that most people like. The music video went on to win like 20 awards or something like that, or like the song that is my most popular in my humble setting, whatever. That song came out because I mean, you can check it later, because I was tuning on the wrong key. Like, I would just, in the morning, I just grabbed the like on the wrong fret. So I was I was fretting the 4th fret on the on the G, I think, instead of the 5th, but I did it in a way that it was rhythmically cool. Like, it was dun 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 dun, but it was wrong. I mean, I was just going to be like bum 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 bum,
Yeah.
And then I was like, that is so cool. And then I went on like a whole day down the rabbit hole, just like following that idea and transforming that idea. So that curiosity and that first moment from, literally fretting the wrong fret and do it in a way that it's creatively interesting, generated like what it's, to me, like my most popular song, or like the song that won 20 awards or something like that, like music video or something like that. But it just came from being playful, like it's, I mean, we call it play the instrument. So that play thing, I try to enforce as much as possible.
That's so good, and that's really important. But yeah, I mean, that's amazing that like those kind of accidents in the moment inspire for you, this incredible song that's done really well. Okay, so let's get into, so in 2023, I think, is when I was looking on your website beforehand a little bit. So 2023 is when your first album, your kind of debut solo album came out. Is that right?
Yeah, April 2023. Yeah.
April 20.
No, March. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
March. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, talk me through kind of, maybe thematically, what is the theme of that first album? And then, like you just said, you just finished tracking guitars for this next album. I want to kind of, hear about that and try to find the thread that kind of connects, the first album to the second one. Because I feel like that's the most important thing in an artist. Like that first album, is kind of like everything in your life up until that point. And then that second album usually kind of picks up somewhere where that left off. That's not always the case, but I find that's a lot of the case, just the how linear, the creativity can flow in different ways.
Yeah. So the first one, Dreams and Lies, it was, I mean, I was sitting on that for a while. I mean, when it's your first work, you have songs that you've been writing for years, and the insecurities too. They're like, is it ready? Oh my God, is it? No, like, no. Do I like this take? No, maybe, like I should get another amp, or maybe I should get them. And then the pandemic happened too. And then the pandemic was the worst, because now you're like, okay, then you start like re-listening to everything that was already ready to go. And they're like, I think I should remix this song, or I think I should, maybe the vocals, I should do a harmony, because you have nothing else to do. And then it's the art of letting go, and then just letting go at the time. But, the themes for me were kind of like a bit of a loss of innocence, not as a child, that loss of innocence, but as somebody who came here with big dreams or something like that, or, like those things. And then you just realize that you were kind of living in ideality versus reality. Like you were more like, in your thing or in your head or something like that, or a little bit of that. And it has a lot of that essence or things that were happening around me. For example, there's a couple songs that they're on character, because at that time there were people that were very close to me that the story kind of permeated and they kind of found a way in me. It was almost like you learn to value something about life by seeing it happen to somebody else, or you're like, man, and it kind of gives you a lot of perspective, because you hear from somebody saying, this person, and you're like, oh man, that sucks. But when it's somebody very close to you, it's almost like it's an imprint, like now on your, the way that you think, and those songs kind of stories find a way into the album. And then at the time, you just, you're hungry, you have a lot of energy, you just want to, and then the album is a little more diverse than, for example, this next one, because at that time, you're kind of like finding yourself, you have very clear thoughts and all that, but that curiosity too makes you go a little from harder songs to a, more like, softer acoustic type of ballads or something like that. So that's where I was at the time, which is kind of like an organized chaos at the time, I would say.
So let's stay on that album. How did you, as a guitar player, so I mean that album did really well for you and allowed you, so now you're a PRS artist,
Ernie Ball,
Pig Hog Cables, which is awesome. And just diving into the gear a little bit, PRS guitars, how long have you been playing PRS guitars?
I had that one, that's Custom 22. I had that for, I would say, like 7-8 years. I was playing them for like maybe 5 years before I started working on the album. And then I have two McCartys that those are like, I don't take those anywhere, just to the studio and back. And those I have a few videos on social media. They're special edition Corina McCartys with Brazilian rosewood. You cannot even take them out of the country. It's one of those that on the back, but I just happened to have them at the right time. Like right now they're way more expensive, but I don't know, like the stars aligned and I saw them, I grabbed one. That's the one that I use for the next album for most of the time. But they're so nice unless I have a gig down the street that I know that as soon as I'm done, somebody can take him home. I just don't want, because they're so rare and they're so special to me. A lot of the Strat sounds, I've had Strats for all my life too, and then there's a lot of like for layering, because a couple of the songs are like very spacey, like futuristic, kind of like Pink Floyd meets Depeche Mode, or so you need to layer a lot of things, and the Strat for that, it just cuts so well, like because like for those type of things. And then that's most of the time. I have a Les Paul that I love too, that for doubling and a few of the things, it made it almost through every song too. But that's kind of like the way that I had for that. I borrowed a few things at the time. I didn't have so many amps or, but very simple type of, setting for that. Pretty much for everything, even for drums, I don't like samples at the time. I don't like any of the digital, because I don't know how to control. If I could, I'm nothing against it. If I knew how to make it work in 5 seconds, which is what takes me to dial one of those, I would do it. But then I found myself playing with it, and then I have to leave it, so for that time, try to have like a very, there's a saying in Spain, which is like, si no tienes soniquete, pa que te mete, which is like, if you don't have a good tone, don't even get in the studio. So it's like, if you don't have it, don't even try. It's like, don't, so that's, so it was always, focused on having like a good tone that it was inspiring at the time, and committing to it. There were the solos in that album, they were, the way that they were tracked, it was wet with all the effects at the time.
Oh, wow.
Like, and believe it or not, I have a bunch of delays over here. The one that made it all throughout was a DD2.
Really?
Like, the Boss DD2, like the old ones with the big chip. It sounded a little, thicker, and like has more body at the time, because it was, like I mean, I think it was the first DD that came out.
Yeah, that was the first one. Yeah, the DD2. Yeah, and I agree with you. It has like a warmer, fuller sound.
Yeah.
And it's just that early digital delay that had, I don't know, just something about it has its own character.
Nothing. I mean, and I have a bunch of the other ones, but in those tracks and the other thing, in that context, that was the one that worked out. So I was committing to them. I was like, this sounds good to me. It inspires me. Let's just do it like this, because otherwise I'm going to spend hours, going through plugins and trying to this. I was like, if it speaks to me, let's try to make it, give you goosebumps as it is right now. And if it creates that, it's not much to do. I mean, just, mixing it, I guess,
Right.
or.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I'm a big fan of printing, like, I heard this saying that Andy Wood said, is fix it in pre.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, like committing to the sound, because that option paralysis, I'm working on a solo guitar album and I'm finding it's so hard to commit. Like, one, because it's like, after I'm working all day tracking here at the studio, like for work, the last thing I want to do with my, free time is to record for free for me.
And
printing those wet effects, I think is important though. Like if you've got the sound that inspires you, what amps were you using on that first?
I used the Jubilee is the one that I've used most of the time, even for this record too. The Jubilee with a few different things in front of it, depending on the flavors. Normally a couple of overdrives in front of it, like more like it could be like a clone flavor type of thing, like a Wampler Tumnus is the I have a Centaura, like a clone or something like that we used for a few other things, and a couple Maxons, the 808 and OD9, I think. So I would normally have that as a palette of colors in front of it, like I just do like an entire line. And then we're going through with the guitar or something, we kind of feel like if the guitar is a little brighter, maybe the clone is a little warmer,
Gotcha.
Or like if this is a little, more or less that, not too gainy, not too not too gainy. That's what we used. The trainer, I don't know that those. Those Canadian, like the 70s Canadian ones. I did a session once years ago, and a guy had one of those, and they were like, "That's like the poor man's plexi."
Yeah.
So like if you can get one of those, and that is modified, like that it has a master volume, because I think the original ones didn't have. So it's like a bass, like a bass master, like 45 or like a plexi type of flavor. For cleans is beautiful. Like that one's like very analog-y, like very, awesome. For that. And then, some things I had an AD30, an orange AD30, which is kind of like their more like rock-ish type of thing. Like Jimmy Page, I think, used one or something. That's the reason that I got it. But I ended up selling it because it was cool, but I was only doubling a few songs with it. I mean, it was more for textures than anything else. That's for that. And then now for this one, I used the Jubilee. There was a Morgan in the studio. I recorded that. The guitars I did, most of the time, bass and all that I did over here. But guitars this time we did a Total Access in Redondo Beach, Total Access Studios, super cool. And Steve had a Morgan for the clean ones that was like beautiful, man. Like that thing was great. And the Jubilee most of the time, and Diesel HEX, I think is the newer one that they have, which is like it's a fully analog. It's like the tube amp, but it has a screen and you can program the type of flavors.
It's got like an Axe Effects type of thing built into it.
And man,
really cool.
That was it sounds so good. Like we used it for doubling a few things because I was like, for this album, like the direction that I want is a little, more modern in a way, but without entering what modern is, which is, it sounds plug-in-ish or something. So I want something that doesn't sound dated, that maintains all the good stuff of the analog flavor and all that, but it doesn't sound genetic, like the flavor of the month, and then in 2 years it's going to feel aged,
Right.
like dated. Same for drums. For drums, is this I try not to sample or something like that unless that is something that just adds a little bit to it, but I try not to be like, so if I don't like the snare or something when we were tracking, I just don't move forward. I need to get a good snare to the point that it's that for that. Yeah, but very simple, like mainly those, for.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for
the Jubilee is I think is the Marshall in my mind.
Yeah.
I've never gotten a lot, like, people obviously get incredible sounds out of Marshalls, but I've never been under my fingers, never like been able to like really work it out well. But the Silver Jubilee, I feel like has the best of everything. But yeah, those trainers are like secret hidden gems.
Yeah,
they are. You can get like it's like the
YGTM or something. Yeah, because they're Canadian and they're named like their airports. Everything is Y.
Yeah.
Like, YT something, Y, Yeah, I think this is the bass master, which is, it has the jampering, like, the 4 channels, and then you can
inputs, yeah,
pull it out. I think they added this and a master volume in the back.
Well, and that's cool because then you can just like crank it and get that preamp up. There was also this trainer back in the day that I think was a similar era that was like a 212 combo. It was kind of like the poor man's Fender Twin Reverb.
Okay.
And it was like, it's one of those amps that's like painfully loud and clean. It wouldn't break up.
Okay.
And it was just so, and I remember playing one of those back in Memphis. I think Ardent had one of those, and it was just like, I mean, it was just the loudest, cleanest thing you could ever play, but it was
that
percussive. That was really cool. So for the this new album, it sounds like it's going to be a little bit more modern, maybe lean a little more on the heavy things than that first album.
It's very, very rhythmic. It's the riffs is like from beginning to the, I mean, like the last 2 songs, they get like a little more, psychedelic in a little bit, but it's very rhythmic on that sense. Also, like, I did bass for this one too, which I loved. I mean, because I love playing the bass, but I wanted to do it right, and then I devoted my time. I bought a 1073 Heritage Audio type of 1073. Yeah. Nothing too crazy, but like to get a good bass sound, and I was really enjoying it. So I was like really I did the bass here, and then for the guitars, that was my thing. It was like, I think that, because I was more rhythmic and more, I don't know, like tribal, or like a little more visceral and that way, but in a good sense, like in a make you move, like more like stadium rock type of thing. Like, imagine like something that has that beat, or that groove, groovier, I would say, more than anything else. I was like, I think I need that type of sound, a little something like to fatten up a little more, like the low end maybe on this side, but without pushing it too much. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the moment to me when it gets a little too compressed, also because I'm a rock artist, hard rock, I just don't need something too much, like too distorted, or so that was kind of like that. But believe it or not, it's a lot of ethnic stuff poured into it. Like, I grew up in Spain, and when I was a kid, it's funny, like my parents wanted me to play flamenco, and I didn't even touch it. And now that I'm here, my fiance and all that, we went to Spain, and then she loves it, and then she was like, why don't you get a flamenco guitar and start like practicing more or something like that? So then I bought a flamenco guitar that is awesome. I don't know if you ever had the chance to play. They're like a classical guitar, but they're a little thinner, and the top is spurs and this side is cypress, so it has more projection, because when they're playing, like they played
it's so percussive.
Yeah, it's very so it has more snap, than a classical guitar. Then I got it, and I was like, and that's what I was saying, being so much in the moment. This album, it was a lot of being in the moment, and I was, like, something that was for me to enjoy on my, time off, or I was like, I think this is an awesome line. I'm gonna record this, and then I was set up for mics and all that, and then I was like, I'm going to make a song that has that, because for many years, for example, I wanted to do a flamenco song because that's where I grew up, but I didn't want to do the cheesy, easy thing of like copy pasting a flamenco chord. It's like, like if you play, 3 pentatonic licks in something that has nothing to do, and you're like, it's blues pop. And I was like, dude, it's just, you just added 3 things or like 3 jazz chords and something, and now you're like, I'm a jazz. It's a jazz infused song. No, respect on that. So I was like, if I do something, I want it to be something that it makes sense by itself on its own. It's a song by itself. It doesn't feel like copy pasted or, and it's a song that from the beginning to the end, as the characters are presented, like the nylon guitar is presented, it has a voice that maintains throughout the whole story, and a lot of that came in. A couple of flamenco things poured into it. But there was also a lot of synthy, kind of like, like Kraftwerk type of things that found its way in there. So, and they all made sense. So I was like, this is very cool. Like, because I was working, I have a mini Moog here that I love playing with too. So sometimes it's like, like a couple glasses of wine, and then I turn that on. And then
yeah, that's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of those things. I'm cutting vocals in the next 3 weeks. So right now is like, just practicing and then just, working on that a little bit. But super excited. And, like, if you're working on your next, album, it feels so nice to just get it off your chest. Even though this one didn't feel very stressed out. I mean, because it was almost like like things were evolving and working naturally. Like I was letting the songs drive the bus, and then like even drums, what we were doing the drums, and we did the drums remote, like believe it or not, like I wasn't even in the studio, but it's the studio that I always worked out. Like, so I knew there was nothing to worry about. So we were doing remote, and I was getting what's the program that you use that you get the live sound, the real sound from the room, or audio something, or
audio movers.
Yeah. So I was getting like if I was in the studio, with them.
Yeah.
But I trusted.
That's such a genius plugin.
Oh yeah.
Like being able to multiple people from all over can be listening to the same, thing straight from the DAW. That's awesome.
Yeah, dude. Like the drummer was in Madrid. We were here. It was like nighttime over here, and they were over there. I sent the demos, but then I've done the last 2 records over there. Massive, beautiful room, huge, 3 U47s, like all the mics that you can ever imagine. Huge SSL, everything that you can imagine, and it was more affordable at the time for me to do it over there. But I trusted them so much that it was like, well, trust the people, and then just let them, and then we did that. Then I started tracking bass here after the tour. Really enjoyable then, and then it was kind of like, oh my God, I think this is going to be very tough, or especially now that I'm doing on this one, bass, guitars, and vocals, and a little bit of the synth. But because every time that I've been doing it was at a point that I was enjoying it. It was not like a chore. It was not like it came out super cool. But at the same time, I'm ready to finish it, and then it's out of, it's not mine anymore.
Yeah, I can totally relate. The relief of being able to check it off the list.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, no.
Being able to check it off the list is like, there's nothing like, being able to finally be done. And I think something you said earlier is really beautiful, and it's the art of letting go. And I think that's it. You have to have that, or else you can get, that's where demoitis comes in, and you overwork, and then you're like, okay, well now I'm going to record everything again, but for real, and it like loses all of its luster.
It loses that, yeah.
The art of letting go is so important there, and just staying curious. That's really awesome. I'm so excited to hear the new album.
Yeah, I mean, should be done in the next month, and then now it's more like thinking about, like the timing for, whoever is going to release it or what's going to be the next thing, or but I'm super excited. And then it was something that I thought that will give me a lot more headaches, because the other one I was overanalyzing everything, and
So
sending mixes to friends, and I was A or B, and they were like, they're the same. Dude, they sound the same. And they're like, no, but this one is like 3B higher here, and then this one, the bass does something else. And they're like, who notices that? It's like, only you. It's like, no one else will notice that, or so this one is more like being in the moment, of course, trusting the tone more than anything else. Like, if the tone was good, it's like, record, just
if it sounds good, it is good. That's in serving the song. I feel like like you kind of alluded to this, and it sounds hippy dippy, but I mean, the song kind of knows what it wants, and if you can tap into that, I feel like that's the way to get it, to serve the song, is to really tap into listening to, like, well, what does this song want to sound like?
On this one, I have a shorter one that I felt like acoustic for that, and then I did it, and it didn't work. And then I tried the nylon string, and it didn't work either. And I was like, why? It's the same. And then I tried the 12 string, and that's the one that worked. The 12 string just gave that, lashiness and that, thing. And it was like, well, that's the guitar for this song. But I learned that by trying the three things. And it's the same person, the same melody, and the same chords, but the tones were not working. And then that's the one that worked. So,
That's awesome. So where can people go to listen to your first album? Check out, obviously you're wrapping up recording, so I know there's not going to be a big tour right now, but what's the best place for people to check out your stuff on the
everything, John DeMena, JohnDeMena.com. Over there, you have links to everything, or, social media, or Instagram, or, Spotify, DSPs is all like John DeMena, and YouTube. It's always like fun things coming out on, especially now that you are like working on, you're not touring or something. So it's always like more funny or entertaining, things on social media coming out than, and fun stuff. And, and then that's the best way to be up to date, and then checking out the music or the videos, or, the behind the scenes that it's about to come out.
Thanks for checking out this video and sticking around. Like and subscribe. Welcome to the channel. If this was an introduction to this channel, let me know what kind of content you'd like to see next. And until next time, I've been Colin.